All right, so we finished pretty much everything we're going to learn about organic chemistry in this course. The rest of this course will just be a short introduction to biochemistry. So before we get into that, let's go back into kind of how organic chemistry was started. And that was, noticing the difference between quote unquote organic materials, or things that are alive, and inorganic materials. So for example, if you had a leaf, right, there's my leaf, and then you set it on fire. It would turn into a black pile of soot. And then if you completely burned it, it'd turn all into gas. Whereas something that's inorganic, something that's really kind of not alive, if you will, for example, like a rock, if you set that on fire, nothing really happens, right? The rock's going to get hot, but then it'll just cool back down and it'll still be a rock. Or, a piece of metal, you can smelt it down, and then as soon as it cools back down, it's back to being what it originally was. And so before they thought there was something about something magical about organic compounds, but nowadays we know that's not really true. There is something magical in terms of the complexity, but not real magic. And that's basically that everything in organic chemistry is carbon-based. And so this kind of black soot are just basically polyaromatic hydrocarbons, and then the gas is carbon dioxide gas, whereas inorganic compounds generally don't go into that gaseous form. And so there's a difference between organic and inorganic chemistry, but what about the difference between organic chemistry and biochemistry? And the first thing that we want to note is that there's going to be a lot of overlap. You can't really know or biochemistry without knowing organic chemistry. And then if you know organic chemistry, you know the basis of biochemistry. That being said, they are different subjects, and they have their own intricacies. Generally, in organic chemistry, what we deal with are small molecules. And generally, we try to change them into new drugs or new materials, right? That's the new materials, not necessarily biochemistry. Or some other stuff with it, right? But generally, we focus on small organic molecules and their interaction with things. In the biochem version, basically everything is just zoomed out. And instead of taking a look at small organic molecules, we take a look at cells and the parts of cells and how the pathways within those cells work. So we'll just say how cells/bodies work. But of course, we know that every living being is organic based. And so we're made out of a whole bunch of small organic molecules and large organic molecules. And so the two really have a large degree of overlap. And so just a quick refresher of your biology class, right? Here we've got our little cell. On the outside, we've got our cell membrane. And the cell membrane is made out of lipids, which we'll learn about later. And then, of course, somewhere in the cell, we've got our nucleus. Which is where our DNA is going to be, right? That's made of nucleic acids, which, again, we'll learn about later on as well. And then floating throughout the cell, we've got little kind of workers, if you will. These will be our proteins. They're the things that actually kind of do stuff. So we'll call them kind of workers. And they're made out of amino acids, peptides, which then turn into proteins. And we'll touch on those later on as well. And then elsewhere in the cell, we've got our mitochondria. They are, of course, the powerhouse of the cell, and that's basically where our carbohydrates are going to be burned to produce energy for our body, right? So the carbohydrates are kind of our fuel. So there's just a very brief overview of the cell. And then, of course, we're going to take a look at some pathways in the cell. And it's really fascinating stuff if you think about what's going on. As you've grown and even as you kind of exist, right? We eat food and we need that food. We need that food for energy. So we can transform food into energy, but we can also transform it into people essentially, right? So we eat other food, which are going to be other carbon-based life forms, or at least small molecule derivatives, right? Even if it's a plant, it's still a carbon-based life form. And then we're going to take those pieces, right? That piece of banana that you eat, and you're going to turn them into other stuff. I'm going to say that we're going to turn it into people because it just sounds funny. But right, you eat that banana and your body transforms it into new skin cells or whatnot. And of course, energy as well. In terms of like how deep we're going to go into biochemistry, we're not going to go very deep at all. We're just going to do a basic overview. If biochemistry is something that you're interested in, or if it's, part of your major or whatnot, then you're going to either take a biochemistry course, or you can go ahead and pick up a biochemistry textbook. Our textbook does a pretty good job, but it's biochemistry is very big and very intricate. And so we're just going to take a very brief overview of some of the topics.